It's a good thing they say defense wins championships, because Oregon's defense playing at a championship level.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where you can get a big return. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Individual standouts, and I could just do Atticus Sappington, that'd be the list, but other guys deserve shout-outs as well. And discussion about Dillon Gabriel and the offensive struggles, because I did a rewatch of the game, and I have many thoughts. But we're starting with the defense. That old adage, defense wins championships. Well, this Oregon defense certainly looks like a championship defense, because they're winning more games for the Ducks than the offense, it feels, on a weekly basis. Now, the offense has done good things most of this year, but the defense continues to be good situationally. They can survive injuries. They get off the field. Where were the penalties this week? Oh, they weren't really there. Not as badly as they were a week ago. So they progress. They make adjustments. They've got plenty of depth. Just a lot of things to like across the board. Oregon in this game, by the way, 7 penalties for 55 yards, and that includes a couple of penalties that, upon second watching, and frankly after first watching, didn't look like penalties to me. So the penalties improved, the defense continues to play well, and the numbers just continue to back this up. Like, whatever gripes you have with the Oregon offense, I'm staying all positive today, by the way. Everything I say on today's show, all right, in the third segment, it'll be a little bit of back and forth and whatnot. But for the first 2 segments, it's going to be all positive. And we'll address more of the negative stuff, because there was plenty of that when I went back and watched the game. That's for tomorrow's show. Today's show is, hey, you should feel good. I think it's easy after that game to say, I don't know, I feel a little uneasy about Oregon right now. Nope. You should feel really good about the defense. So here are numbers from that game against Wisconsin. The Badgers were 1 of 12 on third down. 1 of 12. Now, a football coach at the college level told me one time that third down is a function, and I've heard Dan Lanning say this too, third down on offense or defense is a function of how you do in first and second down. That's true. You still have to be really good situationally and make key spots and avoid penalties that extend drives. 1 of 12 on third down against a Power 4 team that's probably making a bowl game this year on the road. That's pretty darn good. In fact, some would say it's almost as good as you could possibly expect, because the only thing you could do better would be going 0 of 12 on third down. They allowed 96 yards passing. And yeah, Braden Locke missed some throws in this game. No doubt about it. He had some guys, didn't hit them. I think that's a factor of Braden Locke not being a great quarterback. I think it's also a factor, or also a product of Oregon's defensive line getting in his head a little bit, speeding up his internal clock, causing his mechanics to get off, disrupting him time and time again. Oregon's defense allowed 3.8 yards a carry. They had the late 4th down stop. They had the game-sealing interception. Everything about this game was a defensively led victory. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that. Because it's harder to play offense sometimes than it is on defense. And offense requires a lot more coordination and execution and timing and rhythm. And defense, certainly it has those components. But it's really about, you got to line up and you got to just beat the guy in front of you. And Oregon has done a great job all season long of having 12 guys on the field. Oh, sorry, not 12 guys. 11 guys on the field. But, there was that one time where they had 12 guys on the field, of course. 11 guys on the field that just go out and execute. And the defense executed at an incredibly high level. I predicted this game to be 34-17 Oregon. Wisconsin ends up scoring 13 points. About what I expected, slightly better. But then I looked at the numbers after the game, and after I watched it back again, I went, that was even better than I thought it was. They're really good. And you know what's great about this Oregon defense too? They've had a propensity to get off to strong starts. Remember, Maryland wouldn't have scored on their first possession last week if not for the running into the punter or the roughing the punter incident. That doesn't happen. Oregon starts the game with a 3-and-out. Oregon's defense came out and set the tone. They set the tone, and when you're playing in a road environment like that, you're looking for something to take the crowd out of it, to not let them continue to flow and pump up and get louder and louder and more energetic and the team feeding off of them and whatnot. They didn't have that until the offense gave it to them with the red zone interception. That's when the crowd started to come alive. But the defense came out blistering hot. Wisconsin could not run the ball. Wisconsin didn't even hit 100 yards passing the ball. They had one interception. They could have had three. I mean, Bryce Betcher dropped one. They nearly had another. Like, I just love watching this defense grow over the last couple of years with Dan Lanning, Tosh Lupoi, of course, at the top of the pyramid, but the guys who have been in the system for a couple of years, like Jeff Bossa, or newcomers like Brandon Johnson and Jabbar Muhammad. Everybody's playing pretty darn good football right now. And yeah, they gave up a pass on 1st and 20 over the top that they shouldn't have. That was the one blemish. That was the one blemish that Oregon's defense had for the entire game. Boise State in week 2, and I don't think they would if they played Oregon's defense with the way it's playing right now, and Ohio State. Those are the only teams to get over 20 points on Oregon's defense this year. Really impressive stuff. And by the way, when you were watching that game, how quickly were you able to forget that Jordan Burch didn't play? Jordan Burch didn't play. He might be Oregon's best defensive line prospect in the NFL. I don't know. I go back and forth. There's going to be a fascinating conversation on the show this week at some point about who Oregon's best defensive player is. And boy, I could go in a lot of different directions. I could easily name 3 guys on the defensive line. Easily name 3 guys and say, that's Oregon's best defensive lineman. Well, one of those guys wasn't there. And yet, did you feel like Oregon was getting pushed around in the trenches, or did you feel like it was the opposite? They dominated in the trenches. Yeah, I felt like it was the second one. Did you feel like they couldn't get pressure on the quarterback? No, they could. Had a strip sack early in the game, got plenty of pressure on Braden Locke, hit him a couple times. Like, I just love watching this Oregon defense play. And last year, I liked watching the Oregon defense play. But this one is better. This is the best version of the Dan Lanning, Tosh Lupoi defense that we have seen so far. And I think that Lanning and Lupoi have built the sort of defense that a lot of us built up in our minds when they became the head coach and defensive coordinator at Oregon. Once those guys get in place and you look at their track records, where they've been, the way they recruit and how they coached and the performances and whatnot, you think, boy, you should be able to build a really good defense. Yeah, they have. And you got playmakers on the defensive line. You got playmakers at linebacker. You got guys doing some great stuff in the secondary as well. It is a balanced unit. I don't feel like there's a huge weakness there, and that's going to travel week to week. That's going to travel all the time. Neutral site, road game, Autzen Stadium, wherever. Doesn't matter. Defense is there, and I love the way that they played and thought that had an argument that it was the defense's best game of the season. It's a big claim. There have been a lot of games. I don't think there is a game where the defense was as needed as that one. You even go to the Ohio State game. Yeah, they had a great situational sequence where, the 12-man and that whole ordeal, and then they're able to make the stop, get off the field, run out the clock, boom, game over. You gave up 31 points. It's 7 more than they should have because the officials had that missed replay review early in the game. But still, yeah, the defense probably didn't have its best day, but still played well enough to win. And that's what's going to happen when you play another top 5 team in college football. So you can dominate everybody else, but once you play someone that's got NFL dudes all over the place, yeah, it's going to look a little bit different. So that was a great game for the defense, but this, I think, was the crown jewel defensive performance so far of the 2024 season. If you disagree, let me know in the YouTube comments, of course, or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. My favorite segment of the year. Can only do it 14, 15, 16 or so times per calendar year. Individual standouts. Because guys just need to get love because of how they played. Yeah, Mateo Uyunglele is up there. He's not even my number 1 shout out. That's coming up next. Right after we talk about 5 Hour Energy. So I'm really busy this time of year. I've got 2 shows that I'm doing 6 days a week. I've got a bunch of play-by-play for Southern Utah. It's crossover season. Sometimes I need a little extra juice, and 5 Hour Energy is just that. And for someone like you, 5 Hour Energy knows that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life, and it takes a lot of energy to power through the day and all season. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, of course, I presume everybody out there rooting for Oregon, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com. Ship nationwide. That's 5hourenergy.com. All right, let's do some individual standouts here. By the way, shout out to Andrew Matshiner. Hope that you're watching the show, and thank you for supporting it. So, Atticus Sappington. Man, how grateful should we be that he's Oregon's kicker right now? The answer is pretty simple. I don't know that Oregon win. In fact, I feel pretty confident saying for 2 reasons, Oregon loses this game to Wisconsin a year ago. If it plays out in that fashion. Number 1, I don't think Oregon goes perfect on field goals a season ago. And number 2, I don't think the defense was quite as good, though it was really good last year. Make no mistake about it. They averaged like 17, 18 points per game allowed. I like this unit better, but last year's was still quite good. I don't know that last year's team wins that game in that environment, but this year's team does. And Oregon's 11-0. We get to sit with that for a week, and then it is Husky week to wind down the regular season, and then the Big Ten championship game. So Atticus Sappington could be the only guy that I shout out. When he outscores the rest of the offense, that is worthy of recognition in the archives of the Jedi Order. It really is. And yes, he made my heart jump a bit on that go-ahead field goal. Because it was a little low, it was a little left, but guess what? It went through, and that's all that matters. And I tell you what, all the other kicks too, these are not chip shots either. He hit one from beyond 40, he had a 36-yarder, he had the short one. Like, he looks phenomenal. And there was kind of a back and forth throughout the season. Atticus Sappington, Andrew Boyle, and Boyle might be better if you need a 50 to 55-yard field goal try out there. But boy, from 45 and in, I trust Atticus Sappington exclusively after that performance. The wind was blowing, the crowd was roaring, it was cold, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Absolute stones from Atticus Sappington. The biggest, and the whole field goal unit, by the way. The whole field goal unit, yeah, it didn't work out perfectly on the fake field goal. If Patrick Herbert blocks the only guy that was actually there, I don't know why he veered to the outside, but he did. If he doesn't do that, the fake field goal gets pulled off, and Dan Lanning looks like a genius again. But guess what? The defense made it not matter. So Atticus Sappington deserves the biggest shout out of anybody on this Oregon team. 9 points individually, makes his lone extra point. Stud. Just an absolute stud, and it is a really nice place to be, where it doesn't mean he's going to make every big kick for the rest of the season. It doesn't. It doesn't automatically mean that. What it does mean is Oregon fans can feel confident watching, knowing, hey, if we don't convert this 4th down, kick the field goal, you can take the points, and you feel good about Atticus Sappington right now. So his confidence should be sky high. He hit the game winner against Boise State, and he was a big part of winning this game. A defense and special teams game, just the way the Big Ten drew it up. Now we are officially members of the Big Ten. So wanted to start with that. Other individual shout-outs who I thought had just stellar games. Starting on defense here, Mateo Uyunglele is, I don't know what else a first-round pick looks like. He's not Kayvon Thibodeau. Nobody is. But boy, after Thibodeau, give me an edge rusher who's been better at Oregon in the last 15 years. Like, he is, I believe, top 10 in the country in sacks this season. Like, he's just everywhere. And he's not a one-trick pony either. He's not someone who just rushes the passer. He's got a good array of moves, but he's really good against the run. He is ridiculously strong. He makes plays in space. He was held 2 or 3 times when it wasn't called. I saw that tweet going around of Oregon got help from the chop block. Yeah, same play. Mateo is clearly being held, and that's how Braden Locke is able to break, contain, and throw the ball down the field. Like, he's just a menace. He's just an absolute menace every single week. Probably his best overall game as a Duck, and his most important one. No Jordan Burch out there, And Mateo is a big reason why there's not a lot of drop-off. So he gets a shout-out. Jamari Caldwell as well, best game as a Duck. He was disruptive. He was active. He got his hand on the ball at the end of the game. They got popped up in the air, and Mateo makes the game-sealing interception. Derek Harmon was the same guy he always is and drew plenty of attention from the Wisconsin offensive line, and Jamari Caldwell stepped up big time. I think that was his best game. And I've said that a couple times this year. And he flies under the radar because he gets lost in the shuffle with all these great defensive linemen. Caldwell's been really good. And I thought he was phenomenal. I thought he was more disruptive and more impactful than Derek Harmon on Saturday night. And that's a really difficult standard to be able to get up to. So Jamari Caldwell for sure. Bryce Betcher's another one. Bryce Betcher had a nice game. Bryce Betcher did a lot of really good things in this football game. Led the Ducks in tackles, almost had an interception, had a TFL, but did a lot of little things like holding the guy to 2 yards instead of letting him get 4 to 5, or making a tackle in space, or not getting pushed around. Like I just felt like he was very active, and he's had games where he flies up, and he has games like this where he leads Oregon in tackles. And then he'll have other games where it's more of a Jeff Bossa kind of day. But that was definitely a Bryce Betcher kind of day. Bossa had a nice game as well. But I think Betcher absolutely was a stud defensively for the Ducks. And then the tight ends. No, I'll get to offense first. I'll wrap up defense here. Brandon Johnson, another guy who early in the season kind of popped, was making a bunch of plays. He was all over the place. He had the first interception of the season for the Ducks against Idaho. And then throughout the course of the year, he's still been solid, but he hasn't necessarily been as impactful. And on Saturday night, he was making impact plays. Box, 2 thumbs down for Brandon Johnson right there. That's just a phenomenal celebration. It really is. And Johnson got to do it a couple of times. He had good coverage on a 3rd and goal situation that held Wisconsin to a field goal. And yeah, Braden Locke wasn't accurate. I think Johnson would have required a literally, pretty perfect throw in order to beat him. He has the big pass breakup late in the game. He did some nice things in the run game and blitzing, which he's done all season long. I thought he had a really, really nice game. 3 guys on offense, and I didn't love what I saw. But again, keeping it positive here. I'm Captain Positivity today. That's what I am on today's show. Tomorrow, we'll flip the script a little bit, like just a little bit, and be like, okay, these things weren't quite as good. Kenny and Sadiq and Terrence Ferguson were awesome, absolutely awesome. Sadiq only caught 1 pass, but it was a 24-yarder, which for Oregon's offense felt like scoring a touchdown in and of itself. T-Ferg 3 catches for 52 yards. Yeah. He fell down. The turf monster got him. I got several questions about that. Like, what happened to T-Ferg? Why did he fall? I don't know. He's a human being. It happens. It unfortunately happened in a moment where he probably catches it and runs in for a touchdown. If not at the very least, he's going to set up Oregon 1st and goal. But yeah, Gabriel threw a great ball down the field on 3rd down, and he fell. I don't know what to say about that. But he didn't just do good things in the passing game. You go watch some of the plays where Oregon had success running the football. There weren't as many as I would have liked, but it was still a pretty good day for the ground game. Like it was good enough. T-Ferg and Kenyon Sadiq are moving guys around. T-Ferg had the block on the Jordan James touchdown. He pulls around on the counter and he lead blocks to the outside. He clears the corner and boom, James scores a touchdown, ties the game. Sadiq and Ferguson both, I think they've been phenomenal blocking so far this season, and they deserve a shout out for that. And then lastly, Jordan James. After Atticus Sappington, Oregon's offensive MVP. And if you're talking offense, it would be Jordan James, and Sappington is he's a special teams player. If you want to separate that, that's fine. This was a game where Whittington didn't feel like he was quite in the zone or running as well as he has in the last couple weeks, but boy, Jordan James is the same guy every single week. And Oregon was able to give him some rest against Maryland. Boy, that was on display against Wisconsin. 25 carries, 121 yards, and he was doing a lot of it himself. And the physicality, the explosiveness that he's showing on a weekly basis, boy, he was absolutely huge. On a night where the passing game went kind of dormant, Jordan James was carrying the load. Those are my individual standouts for the week. If you've got someone I missed, well, there's another show tomorrow, and so I can talk about them. If you'd like, drop a note in the comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @SMcLaughlinCFB, or at Locked On Ducks. DMs and mentions are wide open. Let's talk about Dillon Gabriel. I'm going to talk about him more as the week goes on, but let's take a glance at Dillon Gabriel. No touchdowns in this game. Does that mean he can no longer win the Heisman? Well, that depends. That's coming up next. First, let's talk about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action and college football with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL. It's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. FanDuel.com, that's where you go to get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. If your first bet had been on Oregon to beat Wisconsin, you would have been sweating, but you would have gotten that $150 in bonus bets. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And if you want to go to Oregon's final regular season home game of the year against Washington, Game Time is the place to get your tickets. Game Time Picks makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. And yes, of course, that includes the Ducks. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. That might be among their best features. They've got their lowest price guarantee, Game Time ticket coverage. You just want to check out Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Oh yeah, that's right. It is game time. All right, it's mailbag time. As I said, YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter, or if you want priority access and a bunch of other perks, go become a Locked On Ducks insider. Link in the description below. You can get a free 14-day trial. Bud asks, does Marcus Mariota winning the first Heisman as an Oregon quarterback help or hurt Dillon Gabriel's chances of winning the Heisman this year? And does Oregon need to win the Big 18, nice, championship game on December 7th for Gabriel to win the Heisman, as finalists are announced on December 9th? And with the 12-team playoff, would you support the Heisman be giving later, given that after at least some of the playoff games are held? I'd give the Heisman Trophy after the season. It's how every other sport does it. And I don't think in every sense college football needs to be like every other sport. But if I were to give a timeline of when should you give out the Heisman Trophy, I don't know, after the entire season is played out, so you can see who was shining on the biggest stages, the postseason. Like, that makes a lot of sense to me, but college football doesn't always make sense. It's okay, we love it anyway. With regards to DG's Heisman hopes, yes, Oregon has to win the Big Ten. We saw it last year with Bo Nix. Oregon loses the Pac-12 championship game, and Bo Nix goes from a slight Heisman favorite to finishing third. That was the difference. Whether or not you think it is fair, an individual's Heisman chances are directly tied in many instances to their team's success. Perfect example. Who's the Heisman betting favorite right now? According to our friends at FanDuel, it's Travis Hunter. Why? Well, Travis Hunter is a very good football player. He's minus 330 to win the Heisman right now. Why wasn't he minus 330 earlier this year? Colorado wasn't good yet. They've now won 4 straight games. They control their own destiny to not just win the Big 12, but make the college football playoff if they're able to win the Big 12. If they don't do that, it's a knock on his chances, but he's got the sort of statistical profile to overcome that. Dillon Gabriel does not. Dillon Gabriel has to be the quarterback of an undefeated Big Ten champion Oregon Ducks. And that momentum in the narrative department can absolutely be a tidal wave that he rides to a Heisman Trophy. That's possible. Beat Washington and beat either Indiana or Ohio State, who play this week, of course, in the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis. And Gabriel can't get in there and win it. There's a bias at that position towards quarterbacks. If Colorado continues winning, though, and Travis Hunter can say, not only do I have this unique statistical profile that we haven't really seen in college football before, but my team is also winning at a level that a lot of people didn't expect them to. I thought Colorado would be improved. I didn't think they'd be able to make the Big 12 championship game, but they absolutely can if they're able to beat Kansas this week, so which is not going to be an easy thing, but something I think they'll probably do. It gets complicated when you have all these other stories, when you have all these other narratives. So I hope it makes sense what I'm saying, that Travis Hunter is aided by his team's success, but he's not reliant upon it. Dillon Gabriel has to have Oregon be an undefeated Big Ten champion for him to get an invite to New York City, because his numbers are good. His numbers are not great. His numbers are not so spectacularly good that the committee will look and say, well, I mean, he just has to be there because he's doing this. No, it would be more of a, Mac Jones at Alabama being a Heisman finalist, or Max Duggan at TCU. I think Duggan probably had much bigger, better numbers. Stetson Bennett at Georgia, where it's, yeah, he's the best player. He's at the most important position on a team that's pushing for a national championship. With regards to the first part of your question, does the Mariota thing factor in? No, I really don't think it does. Alabama running backs have won several times. No, I don't think there's a consideration there, good or bad, with regards to, well, could he be the second Oregon quarterback, or do we not want to give it to an Oregon quarterback? Like, that thought doesn't, I don't think it crosses the minds of Heisman voters. I think that it's just along the lines of what's the story this season? What's a great story? And for Dillon Gabriel to have that story in his final year of college football, yeah, he set a record for all-time touchdowns that he threw to Janoris Wilson. Amazing play. And that all that stuff is good and fine. I don't know that he could overcome Travis Hunter and Ashton Genty, frankly, who is going to push for Barry Sanders' single-season rushing record. So it's still alive. It's still possible. But I think Oregon's got bigger aspirations at the moment, and certainly it drops off a bit for him when he has a game where he has no touchdowns. Now, that's not going to happen in Oregon's next two games, but it doesn't help. So this question came from John. Why do you think Wisconsin was able to have success on outside blitzes? Who should have responsibility for the outside blitzer? Why couldn't our receivers get separation? Why did Wisconsin have fairly good success running outside the tackle box? It appeared the Wisconsin offensive line did a great job of sealing off our defenders from the running back on whichever side the running back went. It seemed to cause Oregon lots of trouble and allow the Wisconsin to run for significant yardage. How can a defense stop that from happening? Well, I don't want to go too heavy on X's and O's because I'm not a coach. I think I know more than the average college football fan. I do talk to a Division I football coach every week. We discuss plenty of X's and O's stuff. But do I know as much as a coach? No, not exactly. With regards to the rushing question, I know it seemed at times like Wisconsin had a lot of success running the ball. They went for 136 yards on 3.4 yards a carry. 130 yards on 3.8 yards a carry. I'm going to take that. And this is where, and I talked about the defense earlier, this is a great example of what I'm talking about. Any critique you can come up with for Oregon's defense is extremely nitpicky. Extremely nitpicky. Like, I have a buddy who is getting a lot better at golf. He's worked his way down to being from like a 12 or 13. He's down to like a 4. I think he might even be a 2 handicap at the moment. And like I've worked with him on his swing and helped him out and whatnot. And I do that for one of you, as a matter of fact. I do that for several of my friends. And so when he sends me videos now, compared to when he was, still kind of learning the game, or when we talk about, a round he plays and how he could have done better, how to score and whatnot, the level of criticism and scrutiny is much more finite. It is much more precise because so much is now right. He has such a good swing. He is a really good player. The jump then is you're striving for perfection when perfection's impossible. And I think that's how I reacted when you sent in this question, John. And it's a good question. And then there are some other questions in here that I'll go into a bit more on tomorrow's show, I think, because I want to give them the full run through. And I do have thoughts after watching the game for a second time. But on the running part of it, it's very nitpicky. Like, oh man, they had success. Like, you can't shut a team down every single play. But if you go back and watch how often Oregon won their reps when Wisconsin ran the ball, particularly early in the game, there was nowhere to go. Even when they ran to the perimeter, they didn't always have success. But you can't stop a team on every single play. For example, Oregon basketball beat Troy. They beat them really soundly. Final score was like 82-60 or something. Like, it wasn't particularly close, which was good to see because the Portland game was too close for comfort. But Oregon's defense was really good. Troy still scored 61 points. There were still moments where he went, wait a minute, how'd that guy get open? Hey, why'd they allow a layup there? Oh, they shouldn't do that. You look up at the end of the day, and Dane Altman's team gave up 62 points. You look up at the end of the day, and this Oregon defense gave up 13 points, on the road against a team that was at home off a bye when Oregon had played 8 straight games. I'll talk about that more on tomorrow's show. At least that's the game plan right now. Sometimes the plans can change. But I didn't watch the game and think, boy, Oregon was just getting gashed with these outside runs. Ohio State's going to expose them. No, this Oregon run defense took away the Ohio State rushing attack, made Will Howard throw the football, and they've got a bunch of great wide receivers out there. So I'll get into a couple of those schematic points more on tomorrow's show, but overall, you should be really happy with the way Oregon's defense played. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.